The morning sun slowly seeps through the loosely drawn curtains, painting intricate patterns on the wall of my bedroom. I haven't been asleep for a long time, just lying there staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of the house waking up. The old pipes rattle, the floorboards creak, as if complaining about 70 years of wear and tear. I understand them. My own bones protest every morning, reminding me of the years I've lived and the millions of miles I've driven behind the wheel of a truck. I slowly sit up in bed, feeling the painful twinge in my lower back. Next to me on the empty half of the bed, I stroke the pillow with a familiar gesture, still calling it Ruby's pillow. 3 years have passed and I still can't get used to sleeping alone in this bed, which is too spacious for a lonely old man. "Good morning, old girl," I murmur, as I do every morning. I hobble to the bathroom, avoiding looking at my reflection in the mirror. I don't want to remind myself once again how time has mercilessly changed my face. Once toned and tanned from long drives with the windows down, it is now sagging, covered with a network of wrinkles and age spots. I quickly brush my teeth, trying to ignore my receding gums, and return to the bedroom to get dressed. My wardrobe is simple and practical. Jeans, flannel shirts, a few sweaters for cold days. I pull on a pair of worn but clean jeans, throw on a blue plaid shirt, and head down to the kitchen. Every step down the stairs causes pain in my knees. Another reminder of the decades spent in the cab of a truck, when I had to sit in the same position for hours and then jump onto the asphalt from a height of half a meter. The kitchen greets me with its familiar silence. I methodically put the kettle on, take out the bread for toast, and cut a piece of butter. The movements have been honed over the years, and the daily ritual has become a dance that requires no thought. This kitchen was once the center of family life. Ruby cooked, little Ingram sat at the table, swinging his legs and talking about school, and I, returning from another flight, enjoyed a moment of peace and togetherness. Now only memories remain of those days. I look out the window at the backyard, where Ingram's swing once stood. Now there is only a worn bench where I sometimes sit in the evenings, sipping beer and watching the sunset. How things have changed, I think, stirring sugar into my tea. Ruby left 3 years ago. Cancer took her quickly and mercilessly, leaving no time to say a proper goodbye. After her death, the house seemed to lose its soul, turning into an empty shell filled with ghosts of the past. And along with Ruby, something else was gone, the thread that connected me to my son. Ingram had changed, or rather he had stopped pretending. I had always felt a certain distance from my son, but I attributed it to the generation gap, to my long absences while the boy was growing up. But after the funeral, the mask finally came off. His visits became less frequent. His conversations shorter and more often than not focused on one topic. "Dad, it must be hard for you to be alone in such a big house," Ingram says with feigned concern in his voice. "Pearl and I are worried." Pearl had been his daughter-in-law for 8 years. Thin, with perpetually pursed lips and a judgmental gaze, I had never liked her. Even in better times, when she came to visit with Ingram, she would survey the house as if estimating the value of every item. And now she doesn't hide her irritation when I disagree with their caring suggestions. "At Sunny Pines, you would be cared for by professionals," she insists, fiddling with the strap of her wristwatch, a gesture I've noticed she makes when she's nervous or lying. "The conditions there are just wonderful. The company, the doctor nearby. I'm not stupid. I understand perfectly well what motivates them. The house on Maple Street, though not new, is worth a decent amount of money. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, 6 acres of land. By New Bedford standards, it's an enviable property. And then there are the savings that Ruby and I have been putting away all our lives. We were never rich, but we saved, put money aside, invested little by little. By the time we retired, we had enough to live modestly, but without want. And I see Ingram and Pearl's eyes light up at the thought of the inheritance. I see them exchange glances when they think I'm not looking. I hear their voices change when the conversation turns to my house or money. "Damn vultures," I mutter, biting into my toast. "You'll be waiting a long time." But something inside me still aches at the thought. No matter how you look at it, Ingram is my son, my flesh and blood, the only family I have left. Is it really all about money? Was there never any real affection? I remember teaching little Ingram to ride a bike in the nearby park. I remember his first fishing trip, his first girlfriend, his graduation. There were good moments too. When did it all go wrong? Maybe when I was spending too much time on the road? Or when I let Ruby take on all the responsibilities of raising him? Or maybe it's because I didn't know how to show warmth and love, was always taciturn and reserved? I sigh and pour myself a whiskey. There's no point in thinking about it now. What's done is done. All that's left is to hold on and not let them walk all over me. After breakfast, I decide to do some work in the yard. The old lilac bushes need pruning, and the fence needs minor repairs. I like physical work. It helps me not to think about sad things and makes me feel that I'm still useful, that I can still take care of myself. It's a warm and clear day, one of those autumn days when the air is crisp and fresh and the sky seems especially blue. I work slowly, with frequent breaks, but methodically. By noon, I'm done with the lilacs and move on to the fence, replacing the rotten boards. "Mr. Treadwell, how are you?" calls my neighbor, Mrs. Coalfield, a plump widow in her 60s, walking her pug. "Slowly, Maggie, slowly," I reply, leaning on my shovel. "How are you?" "Same as always, my arthritis is bothering me, but I'm not complaining," she smiles, revealing her neat dentures. "I haven't seen your Ingram in a long time. He must be busy?" "Yes, work, family," I reply vaguely. I'm not about to tell my neighbor that my son visits me once a month, and even then with obvious reluctance. "Say hi to him for me." Maggie nods and pulls on the leash of her pug, who is trying to sniff a bush by the fence. "Have a nice day, Howie." "Same to you," I wave after her and return to work. Towards evening, when the sun begins to set, I finally finish the fence and return to the house. I take a shower, washing away the sweat and dirt, and sink wearily into my favorite armchair in the living room. The old TV mumbles quietly, broadcasting the local news. I listen absently to the weather forecast when the phone rings. "Yes," I answer, already knowing who is on the other end. "Hi, Dad." Ingram's voice sounds exaggeratedly cheerful. "How are you?" "Fine." I don't see the point in long explanations. "I fixed the fence." "You did it yourself again?" "Dad, you should take care of yourself." My son's voice slips with irritation. "We talked about calling someone." "Why waste money when I can do it myself?" I grumble. There is silence on the line. I can almost physically feel my son trying to hold back another lecture about how at my age it's time to relax and let others take care of me. "Okay, it's your call," Ingram finally says. "Listen, Pearl and I want to come over for dinner on Friday. Around 6, is that okay?" I raise my eyebrows in surprise. They usually come on Sundays, and even then, not every week. "Did something happen?" "No, we just want to visit." Ingram's voice rises slightly. "Pearl will make that casserole you like." I snort. Pearl is a terrible cook, and her casserole always comes out either undercooked or overcooked. But I politely pretend to like it, one of the small concessions I make for the sake of family harmony. "Okay, I'll be waiting," I agree. "Great." Ingram sounds almost jubilant. "See you Friday then." "And, Dad?" He hesitates. "We have something important to talk about. But don't worry, it's all good." A chill runs down my spine. "What exactly?" "We'll discuss everything on Friday," Ingram replies quickly. "I have to run. I have things to do." "Take care." And he hangs up, leaving me with an uneasy feeling. An important conversation, in Ingram and Pearl's words, usually means another attempt to convince me to move into a nursing home or sign something over to them. I slowly return the phone to its cradle and rub my chin. Something tells me that this dinner will be different from the previous ones. My son's voice sounded impatient, as if he was struggling to keep some news to himself. "Well," I think, looking at Ruby's photo on the mantelpiece, "let's see what they have in store for me this time." I get up from my chair and head to the kitchen to make myself a simple dinner. The conversation with my son has left a bad taste in my mouth, and I have a feeling that this Friday is not going to be a good one. But if Ingram and Pearl think they can get rid of me easily, they're in for a nasty surprise. The old truck driver has learned to survive on the long roads and has no intention of giving up without a fight. On Friday, I wake up earlier than usual. It's barely dawn outside, but sleep has already left me. I lie there staring at the ceiling and listening to the sound of rain drumming on the roof. Autumn rains in New Bedford are always cold and lingering, as if the ocean is trying to reclaim the piece of land on which the city is located. Thoughts of the upcoming dinner are keeping me awake. I feel that Ingram and Pearl are preparing something serious today. My son was too insistent on the phone, his concern too feigned. Sighing heavily, I get out of bed and start getting ready for a long day. Breakfast, cleaning the house, a trip to the grocery store. I want everything to be perfect when my son and daughter-in-law arrive. Not because I want to impress them, but because my pride won't allow me to show that I need help. After breakfast, I start cleaning, methodically moving from room to room. When it's time to clean the guest bedroom, I freeze in the doorway, staring at the old desk by the window. It was here, 6 months ago, that something happened that opened my eyes to my son and daughter-in-law's true intentions. It was a normal Tuesday, the day the mailman delivers the mail. As usual, I went out to check the mailbox after lunch and found several bills, advertising brochures, and an envelope with the Coastal Real Estate logo. The letter was addressed to Ingram Treadwell, but it had been delivered to my address. Apparently, the mailman had mixed it up, knowing that we were relatives. I wasn't going to read someone else's mail, but when I took the envelope out of the box, it accidentally tore, and some of the contents fell to the ground. Picking up the sheet of paper, I involuntarily read the first lines. Dear Mr. Treadwell, in response to your request for a pre-sale appraisal of the house at 17 Maple Street, we inform you that the current market value of the property is... I felt the ground slip away from under my feet. My house. Ingram had requested an appraisal of my house for sale, without my knowledge, without my consent. My hands trembled, and I almost dropped the rest of the mail. Back in the house, I reread the letter several times, unable to believe it. It clearly stated that Ingram was interested in the possibility of a quick sale of the house within the next few months, indicated that the property would be vacated by midsummer, and even left his contact details for potential buyers. Bastard, I whispered, feeling a wave of anger and bitterness rising inside me. Damn ungrateful bastard. I wanted to call my son immediately and tell him everything I was thinking, but something stopped me. My intuition, developed over decades on the road, where I had to be able to anticipate danger, told me it was better to lie low and gather more information. So I decided to wait. 2 weeks later, Ingram and Pearl came over for Sunday lunch. I behaved as usual, not showing that I knew about the betrayal. After lunch, it started to rain, and Ingram said they would stay until it stopped. Pearl stayed in the living room to watch TV, and my son went upstairs to look for an old photo album, as he explained. I apologized to my daughter-in-law and went upstairs too, pretending to go to the bathroom, but really wanting to see what my son was looking for. I saw Ingram, thinking no one could see him, quickly looking around the rooms, opening cupboards and drawers as if taking inventory. Then my son took out his phone and started taking pictures of the rooms. That was too much. I almost gave myself away, but I held back again. I quietly went downstairs and returned to the living room, where Pearl was absent-mindedly flipping through the channels. Later, when the rain stopped, Ingram and Pearl got ready to go home. In his haste, Ingram left his light jacket on the coat rack. I noticed it after they had already left, but I didn't call out to them. Something told me to look in the pockets. In the side pocket of the jacket, I found a document folded in four, a draft real estate sales contract. I unfolded it and felt the blood drain from my veins. It was a preliminary contract between Ingram Treadwell, acting on behalf of Howie Treadwell, by power of attorney, and a real estate agency. The contract was to take effect on July 1st, just 2 months away. Power of attorney? What the hell, power of attorney? I felt my insides boiling with rage. I hadn't agreed to anything like that. After taking a few photos of the document with an old Polaroid camera, I don't trust digital technology, I carefully put the paper back in the jacket pocket. The next day, I called Ingram and told him I had found his jacket. My son came by to pick it up after work, without checking the pockets in my presence, which only confirmed that he didn't know the document was missing. I began to keep a closer eye on everything related to my home and property. I checked the mail daily, locked all the drawers and cabinets when guests came over, and even called the bank to make sure that no one could access my accounts without my personal presence. A few weeks later, I found further confirmation of my suspicions. Ingram brought me a gift of a new blanket and a set of kitchen towels. While unpacking the purchases in the kitchen, I found several brochures from various nursing homes at the bottom of the bag. Apparently, my son had mistakenly put them in with the gifts and forgotten to take them out. The brochures were marked up. Ingram had noted prices, living conditions, and reviews. And what struck me most was that the actual prices for accommodation were much lower than what my son had mentioned in our conversations. For example, the base rate at Sunny Pines was $1,200 per month, while Ingram had said $2,000. They plan to pocket the difference, I muttered, leafing through the glossy pages. Sell the house, dump me in the cheapest shelter, and pocket the money. I hid the brochures without telling my son about my discovery and added them to my growing collection of evidence. Several months have passed since then. I gathered all the documents, photographs, and notes I had found into a single folder, which I kept in a hiding place behind a removable panel in my bedroom. The same place where I used to keep money for a rainy day when I was traveling around the country. I wasn't sure when or how I would use this evidence, but my intuition told me that the moment would come soon. Returning to the present, I finish cleaning the guest bedroom and move on to the other rooms. Memories of my son's betrayal ache in my chest, but I don't let my emotions get the better of me. Right now, I need to keep a clear head and be ready for anything. After lunch, I go to the supermarket to buy groceries for dinner. Despite Ingram's assurances that Pearl will make a casserole, I decide to play it safe and buy everything I need for a full dinner. I choose fresh fish, potatoes, vegetables for a salad, and a bottle of inexpensive wine, not because I'm expecting a festive atmosphere, but to show that I'm still the master of my own house and capable of entertaining guests properly. In the checkout line, I run into Laura Pinsky, the widow of my former long-haul truck driver colleague. "Howie, I haven't seen you in ages," she smiles, smoothing her gray hair. "How are you?" "Slowly but surely, Laura," I nod. "I cook for myself. I clean up after myself. I'm managing." "Does your son help?" she asks, casually transferring groceries from the basket to the conveyor belt. I press my lips together. Ingram is busy. Work, family. Laura nods understandingly. "They're all like that. My Tommy, too. As soon as the kids grew up, they forgot the way to their parents' house. Only when they need money do they remember where we live." "Exactly," I grunt, not wanting to delve deeper into the subject. "How's your health?" "What do you mean, my health?" "At our age, the main thing is to wake up in the morning," she laughs. "The rest is a bonus." We exchange a few more words, and I promise to drop by for tea sometime. Laura is a good woman, unpretentious and without ulterior motives. Sometimes I think I should spend more time with her. But after Ruby's death, I withdrew into myself, avoiding even simple communication. Back home, I unpack the groceries and start cooking. I methodically peel potatoes, chop vegetables, marinate fish, immersing myself in the process with the same concentration with which I once checked my truck before a long trip. Cooking is calming, allowing me to forget my worries for a while. As I work, I remember other family dinners. Those many years ago, when Ruby was alive and Ingram was still small. How we would gather around the table, discuss the day, make plans. How happy my son was when I returned from a long trip with small souvenirs from different states. How proudly he showed me his school achievements, seeking approval in my eyes. When did everything change? When did that cold calculation appear in my son's eyes? Maybe it was always there, but I didn't want to notice it. I remember how Ingram asked for money for college, how he complained that I wasn't helping enough, even though I spent almost all my savings on his education. How he demanded a new car for graduation, not realizing that I had to take extra flights to save up the necessary amount. How coldly he reacted to the news of his mother's illness, as if it were an annoying inconvenience to his plans. Perhaps Ruby spoiled him too much, and I, always on the road, failed to instill the right values in my son. But did that justify his betrayal? How could I forgive him for making plans behind my back to dispose of my house, my life? I forcefully stab a knife into the cutting board and lean on the countertop, trying to control my emotions. No, I will not let my son control my life. I won't let him throw me out of my own home like I'm some useless thing. If I have to, I'll fight. After I finish cooking, I set the table with the best dishes, the ones I usually only take out on holidays. It's a kind of challenge. Look, I'm still a fully functioning person, capable of taking care of myself and others. After my shower, I put on a clean shirt and pants, comb my hair, and even spray myself with the cologne Ruby gave me many years ago. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, I see a tired old man with deep wrinkles and a dull gaze. But deep in those faded eyes, there is still a spark of stubbornness and pride. At 5:45, I take the folder with the documents out of its hiding place and carefully double-check the contents. A letter from the realtor, photos of the draft contract, brochures with prices for nursing homes, and several other papers I have collected over the past few months. Everything is in place. I'm not sure if I'll need this evidence today, but I prefer to be prepared. Hiding the folder in a drawer in the living room, where I can easily get it if necessary, I return to the kitchen and check once again that everything is ready for dinner. The fish is waiting in the oven, the potatoes are ready to bake, the salad is chopped and dressed, and the wine is chilling. At the beginning of the 6th hour, I hear the sound of a car pulling up. Looking out the window, I see Ingram's silver sedan parking at the curb. My son gets out first, then walks around the car and opens the door for Pearl. They exchange a few quick words, and I notice Pearl nervously tugging at her jacket and fixing her hair. Ingram looks unusually tense, as if he's preparing for an unpleasant conversation. I step away from the window and take a deep breath, preparing for the meeting. Whatever they have in mind, I'm ready. The old truck driver has seen too many roads and weathered too many storms to be afraid of one more. The doorbell rings at exactly 6 o'clock in the evening. I open the door and am greeted by my son's customary smile. Ingram is dressed in a dark blue suit, as if he were going to a business meeting rather than a family dinner. Pearl stands next to him in a strict dress with a stand-up collar, clutching a container, obviously with that very same signature casserole. Her thin lips are stretched into a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Dad." Ingram steps forward and awkwardly hugs me. "You look good." I smell expensive cologne and feel a slight tremor in my son's hands. He's nervous, I note to myself. "Hello, Ingram." I nod and look at my daughter-in-law. "Pearl, come in. Everything's ready." "Hello, Howie." Pearl hands me a container. "I made a casserole, just the way you like it." I take the plastic container, feeling that it is barely warm. Most likely the casserole was made this morning or even yesterday. "Thank you, but I've already made dinner. Fish with potatoes and vegetables. I think we can save your dish for tomorrow." A shadow of disappointment flashes across Pearl's face, quickly replaced by a strained smile. "Of course, whatever is convenient for you." We go into the living room, where I invite them to sit down. There are already glasses and a plate of sliced cheese on the coffee table. A little habit left over from Ruby, who always prepared light snacks before the main dinner. Ingram nervously looks around the room as if seeing it for the first time. "Did you rearrange the furniture?" "No, everything's the same as usual," I shrug. "Maybe I just haven't been in this room in a while." Pearl coughs quietly to get our attention. "What a lovely smell coming from the kitchen, Howie. I didn't know you were such a good cook." "Life forces you to learn," I smile slightly. "When you live alone, you have to learn everything." Ingram and Pearl exchange quick glances. I notice this silent dialogue, but pretend to be absorbed in pouring wine into glasses. "So," I begin when everyone has received their portions. "How's work? Everything okay at the factory?" Ingram takes a big sip of wine before answering. "Yes, everything's fine. Lots of orders. The bosses are happy." "What about you, Pearl?" She takes a tiny sip, barely wetting her lips. "Everything's the same at the supermarket. Nothing new." The conversation isn't flowing. Usually in such cases, Ingram would start talking about vacation plans or some purchases. But today he is unusually taciturn, constantly glancing at his watch. I decide to save the situation by talking about my small achievements. I finished repairing the fence and trimmed the lilac bushes. And Mrs. Coalfield, my neighbor, asked me to participate in a community gardening project. They want to plant flowers by the library. I think I'll agree. "Gardening?" Pearl raises her eyebrows. "At your age, that's dangerous, isn't it? My back, my knees." "I'm managing so far," I reply firmly. "If I start falling over in the flower beds, I'll let you know." Ingram laughs awkwardly, but it sounds fake. "Dad, you've always been stubborn. But Pearl and I are just worried about your health." "Of course," I think, but out loud I say, "I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine." "Better tell me how you're doing with that renovation you were planning. It's a litmus test." I know Ingram and Pearl have been talking about renovating the kitchen in their house for a long time, but they always complained about not having enough money. If they suddenly found the funds, it could explain their behavior today. Maybe they want to borrow from me. "We've put those plans on hold," Pearl replies quickly, exchanging glances with her husband again. "Now is not the best time for big expenses." "I understand," I nod. "Everything is getting more expensive, and salaries are stagnant." "Exactly," Ingram confirms, clearly pleased with the opportunity to latch on to a neutral topic. "Prices for everything have skyrocketed, especially real estate. You know your house is worth a lot more now than when you and your mom bought it." I tense up internally. Here we go. The conversation smoothly transitions to the topic of my house. Really? I pretend to be surprised. I haven't been following the market lately. Oh yes, Ingram perks up. A house like that in this neighborhood can sell for a very decent price right now, especially if you find the right realtor. Have you been researching the matter? I ask innocently. Ingram freezes for a moment, then smiles nervously. Well, just general observations. Everyone in our circle is discussing real estate prices. I nod, pretending to accept the explanation. I'll go check on the fish, I say, getting up and heading for the kitchen, feeling the eyes of my son and daughter-in-law on me. In the kitchen, I open the oven and check the dish. The fish is ready, but I decide to leave it for a few more minutes to buy some time and collect my thoughts. I hear Ingram and Pearl whispering in the living room, but I can't make out their words. Judging by their tone, they are arguing about something. I sigh and pour myself a whiskey. I'm sick of this game, of having to pretend I don't know about their plans. I just want to enjoy dinner with my family, talk about life, maybe reminisce about Ruby. But instead, I have to be on guard, as if an attack could happen at any moment. Ruby, if only you could see what our son has become, I think bitterly. She always defended him, always found excuses for his actions. He's just tired. He works a lot. He's going through a difficult period. I heard these phrases from her every time Ingram showed his true colors, shaking my head to dispel the sad thoughts. I take the fish out of the oven and transfer it to a large platter, surrounding it with roasted vegetables and potatoes. The dish looks appetizing, and I feel a surge of pride. At least I did one thing right today. Dinner's ready, I call out, setting plates on the dining table in the corner of the kitchen. Ingram and Pearl come in, still looking tense. They sit down at the table, and I notice that my son has had more wine. His cheeks are slightly flushed. Looks delicious, Dad, Ingram says as I put a serving on his plate. I didn't know you could cook like this. Your mother taught me a lot, I reply. The rest I learned on my own. It's amazing what a person can do when they need to survive. Pearl grimaces at the last sentence, as if it were inappropriate. I'm sure it wasn't easy for you after Ruby left, she says with feigned sympathy. Alone in such a big house? I'm managing, I reply curtly, starting to eat. This house is full of memories. Every corner here reminds me of Ruby. I understand, Ingram nods, not looking me in the eye. But sometimes memories are too heavy a burden, right? Maybe it's time to start with a clean slate, in a new place, with new people? I chew a piece of fish slowly before answering. A new place? What are you talking about, son? Ingram exchanges another glance with Pearl. She nods slightly as if giving permission. Dad, Pearl and I have been wanting to talk to you about something important for a while now. Ingram begins, putting down his fork. We can see how hard it is for you here alone. You're getting older, and this house, it's too big. It requires too much maintenance. We're worried about your safety. I'm perfectly fine, I reply firmly. Right now, yes, Pearl interjects. But what about in a year? In 2 years? The stairs are becoming increasingly dangerous, and you insist on sleeping upstairs. What if you fall? What if you have a stroke or a heart attack? Who will help you? I have neighbors, I object. And I always have a phone handy. Neighbors are no substitute for professional care. Ingram shakes his head. Dad, we found a great place. Sunny Pines is a modern center for seniors with medical staff, entertainment, a community of peers. I put down my fork and sit up straight. I'm not going to a nursing home. It's not a nursing home, Pearl exclaims. It's a center for active longevity. People your age do creative things, socialize, travel. And how much does it cost? I ask, looking directly at my son. Ingram hesitates a little. There are different service packages. The basic one is about $2,000 a month, but with your pension and savings, it's quite $2,000. I raise my eyebrows. Are you sure? Approximately, Ingram nods. Give or take. Interesting, I say. What will happen to the house if I move? Ingram and Pearl exchange glances again. Well, considering that you'll be living in Pines, it doesn't make sense to keep an empty house. Ingram begins cautiously. We thought, maybe it should be sold? The money would go toward paying for your stay at the center, and the rest could be invested or... And who will handle the sale? I interrupt him. Me? Or have you already arranged everything? Ingram flinches as if slapped. What do you mean? I'm asking, I lean forward, who's going to sell my house? Do you already have a realtor in mind? Maybe even a preliminary contract? Pearl turns pale, and Ingram nervously licks his lips. Dad, I was just exploring options so you wouldn't have to worry about the details. You don't know anything about these things. So you've already been in contact with realtors, I state. Without my knowledge. Just preliminary consultations. Ingram raises his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Nothing serious. I lean back in my chair and look closely at my son and daughter-in-law. They look guilty, but not remorseful. More like children caught doing something naughty, but confident that their actions were justified. And when were you planning to make this move? I ask calmly. Well, we thought midsummer would be ideal, Pearl replies, clearly reassured by my tone. It's the end of spring now, so you'll have time to prepare. Pack your things. So soon? I feign surprise. Have you already booked a place at the Pines? We made a preliminary deposit, Ingram admits, to guarantee you a place. There's a long waiting list. How thoughtful of you. I nod slowly. And you're sure I'll agree? Ingram straightens up, his face taking on a determined expression. Dad, I'll be honest. Pearl and I have discussed this at length and have come to the conclusion that this is the best solution for everyone. You can no longer live alone. It's not safe. And you decided this for me? I feel anger rising inside me, but I hold it back. Yes, Ingram replies firmly. We voted, and we decided that you are no longer part of our family unit. You will live separately under the supervision of professionals. Pearl nods vigorously and even claps her hands slightly. It will be better for everyone. You will have company and care, and we won't have to worry about you all the time. I look at them with disbelief. Do they really think they can just decide my fate like that? That they can exclude me from the family like a worn-out part of a machine? You voted, I repeat slowly, and I'm no longer part of the family. You don't understand, Dad. Ingram tries to smooth things over. You'll always be my father. It's just that, in practical terms, we won't be able to take care of you the way they will at Pines. It's all for your own good. I stare at them silently for a few long seconds. Then I smile softly and shake my head. You know, I always suspected you were up to something like this, but I didn't think you'd dare to say it outright. Ingram and Pearl exchange glances, clearly surprised by my reaction. We just want what's best, Ingram mumbles. Of course, I nod. For yourselves. I slowly get up from the table and walk over to the dresser in the corner of the kitchen. I open the top drawer and take out a blue folder. Then I guess you won't need this anymore, I say, returning to the table and placing the folder in front of Ingram and Pearl. What is it? My son frowns. Open it and see, I suggest, sitting back down at the table and watching their reaction. Ingram hesitantly reaches for the folder and opens it. Pearl moves closer to see the contents too. Their faces change in unison. Confusion, shock, fear, shame. A whole range of emotions flashes across their faces in a matter of seconds. Where did you get this? Ingram asks hoarsely, looking at the letter from the realtor discussing the sale of the house. It just happened to come to me, I shrug. Like these. I point to the brochures for nursing homes with marked real prices, which are significantly lower than those announced by his son. And especially this interesting document. I pull out a photocopy of the preliminary sales contract signed by Ingram. Pearl makes a stifled sound like a sob and grabs her throat. It's not what you think, Ingram begins to justify himself, but his voice trembles, betraying the lie. I watch my son feverishly rummage through the documents in the folder, his fingers trembling slightly. Pearl's face takes on the pallor I've only seen in people who have received the most unexpected and unpleasant news. A heavy silence hangs in the room, broken only by the rustling of paper and the ticking of the old wall clock. I don't understand. Ingram finally breaks the silence, his voice sounding unnaturally high. Where did you get all this? I already told you. It just happened to fall into my hands, I reply calmly. The question is, why did you do all this behind my back? Why didn't you talk to me openly? Pearl clutches the napkin in her hands, crumpling it into a thin bundle. You wouldn't have agreed anyway, she blurts out. You always reject everything. All our suggestions, we just wanted to help. Help me or yourselves? I look straight at my sister-in-law and she looks away. Because these, I point to the price booklets, say something completely different. You quoted a price of $2,000, Ingram. when in fact the basic package costs $1,200. Where did you plan to put the difference? Ingram starts muttering something about additional services and unforeseen expenses, but I raise my hand to stop the stream of excuses. No need. I see what's going on. You plan to sell my house, put me in a cheap nursing home, and pocket the difference. And all without my consent, using some kind of fake power of attorney that I'm hearing about for the first time. Dad, you've got it all wrong. Ingram tries to pull himself together. Yes, we plan to sell the house, but only because it's hard for you to maintain it. And yes, we were looking for a place in a good nursing home. But we would never have done it without your consent. I smile and shake my head. Then what is this? I point to the preliminary contract. It says here in black and white that you are acting on my behalf by power of attorney. A power of attorney that I never issued. Pearl suddenly starts crying, smearing cheap mascara across her cheeks. Things didn't go as we planned, she sobs. We just wanted to solve all the problems at once. What problems, Pearl? I ask quietly but firmly. What problems are you talking about? Ingram gives his wife a warning look, but she doesn't notice. We have debts, Howie, Pearl blurts out. Big debts, loans, mortgage. Ingram made some bad investments and we're barely making ends meet. And your house, it's worth a lot of money. Money that Ingram will get eventually anyway. We just wanted to speed up the process. Pearl, Ingram barks, but she continues. So what? Stop pretending. He knows everything anyway. She turns to me. Do you understand, Howie? We're in a desperate situation. The debt collectors call every day. If we don't find the money in the next few months, we'll have to declare bankruptcy. That means we'll lose our house, our car, everything. I nod slowly. So that's it. Not just greed, but desperation. To some extent, it even explains their actions, although it doesn't justify them in the slightest. And instead of coming to me and honestly telling me about your problems, you decided to throw me out of my house and steal my money? I say calmly, but inside I'm boiling with rage. We didn't want to kick you out, Ingram tries to justify himself. We found a good place, with care for $1,200 a month, even though you told me $2,000. I remind him. Where would the difference go? To your debts? Ingram lowers his head, and that's all I need to know. How much do you owe? I ask after a pause. Almost $150,000, Pearl whispers. And that's not counting the mortgage? I whistle. That's a lot of money. How did they manage to get into so much debt? I remember that Ingram has always been prone to reckless spending, but $150,000? That's a whole other level of irresponsibility. How did you get to this point? I can't hide my surprise. Your salaries are quite decent. Pearl glares at her husband. Ask him. First, he decided he could make money on the stock market. He lost almost $40,000. Then there were those sure investments in cryptocurrency. Another $30,000 down the drain. And then we started taking out loans to cover the previous debts, and everything snowballed. Ingram sits hunched over, making no attempt to justify himself. And instead of solving your problems yourself, you decided to get rid of me and take my house. I say to my son, the house you grew up in, the house that your mother and I have cherished all our lives. I didn't want to get rid of you, Ingram replies quietly. It's just, you really would be better off at Pines. You'd have company, medical care. Don't lie to me now, I say, rubbing my nose wearily. You didn't care about my well-being. You only cared about my house and the money you could get for it. A long silence ensues. I look at my son and daughter-in-law, trying to find some sign of remorse on their faces. Pearl looks more annoyed than guilty. Ingram avoids my gaze. So it's true, I say, more to myself than to them. You really wanted to kick me out of my house to solve your financial problems. Dad, it's not that simple, Ingram finally replies. We're in a desperate situation. The bank is threatening to take our house. We have huge penalties for late payments. We didn't see any other way out. What about asking for help? Coming to me and honestly telling me about your problems? Didn't that occur to you? There is bitterness in my voice. You wouldn't have given us that much money, Ingram mutters. And you've always been against loans and investments. You would have just lectured us about living within our means. You're right, I wouldn't have approved your crazy investments. I nod. But I would have helped you restructure your debts. Find a lawyer. Maybe I would have even lent you some of the money. Because you're my son, damn it. My only son. My words seem to break through some kind of wall in Ingram. His shoulders begin to shake, and he covers his face with his hands. I haven't seen him cry since he was a teenager. I ruined everything, he mutters through his tears. I ruined everything. First the money, now. Now you'll never forgive us. Pearl looks at her husband with poorly concealed contempt. Well, now you're getting depressed too, she hisses. Great, that's just what we needed. I look at my daughter-in-law in surprise. I always knew she was cold and calculating, but such open hostility even at a time like this. For the first time, I truly feel sorry for my son. Perhaps it wasn't just his financial decisions that led to this situation. Living with a woman like that must be difficult. What do you suggest, Pearl? Ingram asks, wiping his eyes. We have no other options. Father knows everything. There are always options, she retorts. Maybe if you had been more persistent instead of giving up right away. Enough, I raise my hand, stopping their argument. I'm not going to listen to you blame each other. What's done is done. I sigh heavily and look at the cold food on the plates. How ironic. I tried so hard to cook a nice dinner for a family gathering that turned out to be a complete disaster for our family relationships. Here's what we'll do, I say after a long pause. I won't press charges for attempted fraud, even though I have every right to. And I won't tell all our friends about what you were planning. In return, you'll leave me alone. No more sunny pines, no more talk of selling the house. I'll live the way I see fit. Ingram looks up at me with reddened eyes. What about our debts? They're your debts, I reply firmly. You got yourself into them, so you deal with them. Find a financial advisor, declare bankruptcy if you have to, but solve your problems honestly, not at the expense of an old man you were going to cheat. Pearl snorts but says nothing. Ingram nods, accepting my terms. I understand, he says quietly. You're right. We deserve this. It's not about what you deserve. I look at my son wearily. It's about trust. You destroyed it, Ingram. I can no longer trust you. And that hurts more than you think. A heavy silence hangs in the room again. I feel a strange emptiness, as if my last ounce of strength has left me along with the revelation. I look at my family, or what's left of it, and realize that we will never be the same again. I think you'd better leave, I say finally. It's late, and we all need to think about what has happened. Pearl jumps up as if she had been waiting for these words. Let's go, Ingram, she says, grabbing her purse. There's nothing more to discuss here. Ingram slowly gets up, still avoiding my gaze. Dad, he stumbles. I'm really sorry. Me too, son, I reply quietly. Me too. I walk them to the door. Pearl leaves first without saying goodbye. Ingram lingers on the threshold. I'll call in a few days, he says, when things have settled down a bit. I nod, unsure if I want that call. Part of me still loves my son, despite his betrayal, but another part doesn't know if I'll ever be able to trust him again. Take care, Ingram, I say, closing the door. I return to the kitchen and begin to mechanically clear the table. The uneaten fish I was so proud of now looks tasteless and gray. I throw away the leftovers from dinner and wash the dishes. Lost in my thoughts. What now? How can I go on living, knowing that the only person close to me, my own son, was willing to get rid of me for money? Will I ever be able to forgive him? Should I? Ruby would have known what to do. She always saw the best in people, found a way to forgive. People make mistakes, Howie, she would have said. What matters isn't that they made a mistake, but what they learned from it. But I'm not Ruby, and right now forgiveness seems like an impossible task. The betrayal of my son and his wife has pierced my heart like a splinter that can't simply be pulled out and forgotten. I wipe the last plate and put it in the cupboard. The folder with the evidence is still on the table. I gather the documents and put them back in the folder. Now I will keep it as a reminder, not of my son's betrayal, but of the fact that I can only count on myself. Turning off the light in the kitchen, I slowly climb the stairs to the bedroom. Each step echoes with pain in my knees, but this physical pain is nothing compared to the pain that squeezes my heart. Today I lost my family, not because of death as with Ruby, but because of something much more bitter, because of greed and deceit. In the bedroom, I sit on the edge of the bed and look at Ruby's photo on the bedside table. You would know what to do, I whisper to her. You always knew. But the photo remains silent, and I am left alone with my thoughts about a future that now seems even lonelier than before. 2 months have passed since that memorable dinner. I sit on the porch of my house, sipping cold lemonade and watching the sun slowly sink toward the horizon, painting the New Bedford sky in shades of pink and gold. Next to me, resting his muzzle on my lap, is Buck, a 5-year-old golden Labrador I adopted from a shelter 3 weeks ago. My hand automatically strokes his warm fur, and the dog sometimes sighs with pleasure in his sleep. It's amazing how quickly he has become a part of my life. I never considered myself a dog person, but now I can't imagine how I ever managed without this faithful companion. Ingram didn't call in a few days as he promised, or in a week. News about him came in directly through Laura, who learned from mutual acquaintances that my son and his wife had officially filed for bankruptcy. Their house was up for sale, and they had moved into a small rented apartment on the outskirts of town. They say things are really bad for them, Laura said when she stopped by with a blueberry pie. Pearl seems to have gone back to her parents in Providence. She couldn't bear the shame of bankruptcy. I listened to this news with mixed feelings. On the one hand, I felt sorry for my son. Despite his betrayal, he is still my flesh and blood, and the thought of him suffering causes me pain. On the other hand, there was a sense of justice in it. He tried to take my home away from me, and in the end, he lost his own. After that dinner, I thought a lot about how to move on with my life. The first few days were filled with anger and bitterness. I wandered around the house, remembering every moment of our conversation, every word, every glance that Ingram and Pearl exchanged. I went over the documents in the blue folder again and again, as if hoping to find something there that would justify their actions. But of course, there was no such justification. Gradually, the anger gave way to calmer reflections. I began to think not about what I had lost, but about what I had gained. Clarity, an understanding of the true state of affairs, freedom from illusions. At my age, many cling to their families as the only anchor connecting them to life. They fear loneliness more than anything else and are willing to endure humiliation, neglect, even insults, just so they don't end up alone. But I've always been cut from a different cloth. Over the years as a truck driver, I've grown accustomed to loneliness and learned to find freedom in it rather than fear. A week after dinner, I visited the office of Marvin Kincaid, a lawyer I had known since Ruby and I bought our house. Despite his venerable age, Marvin is a good 5 years older than me. He still practices law and has retained his sharp mind. "I want to change my will," I said, settling into a chair across from his desk. Marvin looked at me intently over his glasses. "That's a serious decision, Howie. Has something happened?" I briefly told him what had happened, omitting the most painful details. Marvin listened without interrupting, only occasionally shaking his head. "It's a sad story, but unfortunately not an uncommon one," he said when I finished. "I've seen it many times. Money and real estate often become a bone of contention in families." "Don't excuse them," I muttered. "They wanted to effectively throw me out of my house to solve their financial problems." "I'm not excusing them." Marvin raised his hands in a defensive gesture. "I'm just stating a fact. So you want to disinherit your son?" I thought about it. Despite all the hurt, the idea of completely removing Ingram from the will seemed too radical to me. "No, not completely, but I want to distribute most of it differently." In the end, Marvin and I drew up a new will. Ingram would still receive a portion of the inheritance, but significantly less than before. I decided to divide most of the money between a local animal shelter, where I later adopted Buck, and a fund that supports elderly truck drivers who have been left without a means of support in their old age. "Good decision," Marvin approved when I signed it. "A balanced one." With the legal issues settled, I decided it was time to change other aspects of my life as well. For too long after Ruby's death, I had existed in a fog, with no particular aspirations or interests. Now that I had to shake myself awake, I realized that life was not over, even at 73. I started small. I called my old friend Sam Pearson, with whom I had once traveled the country. Sam is a widower like me and lives in the suburbs of New Bedford. We hadn't seen each other for several years, limiting ourselves to occasional calls on holidays. "Howie, hell, is that really you?" he exclaimed happily when he heard my voice. "I thought you had already gone to meet your ancestors." "You're writing me off too soon, old man," I laughed. "How about we meet up, relive the old days, have a drink? Name the time and place." We met at Larry's, a small bar where drivers used to hang out. Sam had changed. His hair had turned completely gray, he had put on weight, and he moved more slowly. But his eyes were the same, lively, mischievous, always ready to spot something funny in the world around him. "You look like you've been hit by a truck," he greeted me with a big hug. "And you look like you ate it," I replied, patting his noticeably larger belly. We spent the evening reminiscing about the old days, difficult routes, and funny incidents on the road. Sam told me about his children and grandchildren, who live in other states and visit him a couple of times a year. "Loneliness is a harsh thing," he admitted when we moved on to more serious topics. "After Jenny died, I thought I wouldn't make it. But you know what saved me? Fishing." "Fishing?" I asked in surprise. "That's right. I started going to Lake Assawampset every weekend. Silence, nature, just you and your thoughts. It clears your head, you know. And the company there is good. Old folks like us. Come join us sometime." The idea appealed to me. I used to love fishing when I was younger, but over the years I had given up the hobby. At first I didn't have time because of work. Then other concerns came up. And then there was simply no one to share the pleasure with. The following weekend, Sam and I went to the lake. I felt awkward, like a beginner, but my skills quickly returned. By the end of the day, Sam and I had caught several decent perch, and I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in a long time. "Next time, I'll introduce you to the rest of the gang," Sam said as we were getting ready to go home. "You'll like Frank. He used to be a cargo ship captain. And Harold, he's a former sheriff. He looks grumpy, but he's a sweetheart." And so my new life began. Every Saturday I went fishing with Sam, where I really got to know the gang, a group of older men who shared a love of quiet relaxation by the water. We caught fish, grilled it right there on the shore, shared stories, and most importantly, laughed. God, it had been so long since I had laughed so sincerely. On weekdays, I also stopped sitting at home. I started going to the local senior citizens club, where I played chess and dominoes with my new friends. I volunteered at the library, where I helped arrange books a couple of times a week and sometimes read stories to children. Strangely enough, my horse-old trucker's voice was popular with the little ones, especially when I played different characters. And then Buck came into my life. I went to the animal shelter to make a donation in accordance with my new will, and I saw him, an older dog who looked at me with such hope and loneliness in his eyes that I couldn't resist. "His owner died 3 months ago," explained the shelter worker. "Buck has been here ever since. People usually want puppies and are reluctant to take older dogs. I knew that feeling, being written off because of my age. The decision came instantly. 'Fill out the paperwork,' I said. 'I'll take him.' The first few days with Buck were not easy. The dog missed his former owner, was suspicious of me, and was reluctant to eat. But gradually, the ice between us melted. Daily walks, playing ball in the garden, evenings by the fireplace when I scratched his ears while reading a book did the trick. We became friends. Buck gave me what I had been missing in my life: unconditional affection and the constant presence of a living creature by my side. With him, the house no longer felt empty. Every time I came back from a walk or from the store, I knew I would be greeted with joyful barking and a wagging tail. Life took on a new rhythm, a new meaning. I no longer felt like an abandoned old man that people wanted to get rid of. I was the master of my own destiny, a man with plans and interests, with new friends and a pet that depended on me. I tried not to think about Ingram, but sometimes news about him still reached me. Their house had been sold at auction for much less than market value. Pearl had indeed left him, unable to cope with the financial collapse and public humiliation. Ingram had moved to a neighboring town and found a low-paying job. He called me once. His voice sounded uncertain, his words jumbled. "Dad, I just wanted to see how you were doing," he said. "And well, apologize again. I was an idiot." "Yes, you were," I agreed, not wanting to make it easy for him. "How are you?" "Honestly, sucks. Pearl left, lost the house, working as a stalker now. But you know, in a way, it's a relief. No more pretending I'm more successful than I really am." We talked a little more, awkwardly with long pauses. I didn't invite him over, and he didn't ask. We both understood that it would take time to rebuild our relationship. A lot of time. And there's no guarantee that it's even possible. This evening, sitting on the porch with Buck, I think about how strange life can be sometimes. 3 months ago, I was a lonely, disappointed old man whose own son wanted to kick him out of the house. And now, I have a loyal dog, new friends, hobbies that bring me joy. I feel more alive than I have in the years since Ruby died. The sunset paints the sky dark red, and I realize it's time to go back inside. Tomorrow we have to get up early. Sam, the gang, and I are going fishing. Frank promised to show us a new spot where, according to him, the perch are as big as sharks. Come on, buddy. I pat Buck lightly on the neck. It's time for dinner. The dog stretches lazily and gets up, ready to follow me anywhere. Together we enter the house, which now doesn't seem as empty and echoey as before. There are no more ghosts of the past, only the warmth of the present and the promise of the future. I turn on the light in the kitchen, pour food into Buck's bowl, and put the kettle on. Simple actions, an ordinary evening. But in this simplicity, I have finally found the peace that I have been missing for so long. I know that there will still be difficult days ahead. Age takes its toll, and with each passing year, the body becomes less and less obedient. But now I have support, I have people who brighten my loneliness. And most importantly, I have a clear understanding of who I am and what I am worth. I am not just an old man who needs to be gotten rid of. I am Howie Treadwell, a man who has lived a difficult but dignified life. A man who, even at 73, found the strength to start all over again. Buck comes up to me after finishing his dinner and lays his head on my lap, looking at me with loyal eyes. I scratch him behind the ears and my heart feels warm. You know, buddy, I say to the dog, it looks like we've settled in pretty well. Buck just wags his tail on the floor in response, but I don't need words to know he agrees.
Welcome to the Story Channel. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few notes. The content in this video uses AI-generated images and voice narration, combined with the channel's creative editing. Everything is intended solely for entertainment purposes and does not depict or reflect any real events or real people. Hope you enjoy the story and have a great time watching.